This week on the show, Na'Vi win in California, North American teams come up short, and DreamHack Winter is right around the corner. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Jason Moses O'Toole, and you're watching PopFlash. Our first story this week is the Intel Extreme Masters, which took place in San Jose, California on the weekend of November 21st to 22nd. There were $100,000 up for grabs and just a straight single elimination knockout bracket here, Jason. So let's take a look at the first matchups here on screen. So as we can see, as we run down this bracket, we've got G2 versus CLG, Cloud9 TSM, Na'Vi Luminosity. But the first team I want to pick on here, Jason, is TSM. As they went through this bracket, they made it all the way to the grand final and they beat Cloud9 2-1. They knocked out G2 2 maps to nil, and then they lost to Na'Vi in that grand final. However, I think it's fair to say they didn't look convincing in the bracket. They kind of a little bit flaky at times. Is this still a team that struggles when they're considered the favourites, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they had a pretty tough time, even opening against Cloud9, then against G2. I mean, those are some pretty skilled lineups that they had to face, but they mentioned that after Cluj, they took a little bit of a break, and they came back, and they were still feeling a little bit shaky, and I mean, you could kind of see it. But I don't think anyone really expected them to fall to... I know I definitely didn't. I know the analysts at the event didn't expect them to fall in the finals to Na'Vi. But yeah, their struggles all the way through were really, really curious. And it just seems like they're still doing the same things that they've been doing that have worked for them for some time. But it just seemed like the individual performances weren't very inspired. Didn't feel very confident watching them play, despite them being favorites in every matchup.
And just a word about the North American teams here at this event as well, because it wasn't great for you. I always have to bring up the North Americans. I'm sorry, Jason. Yeah. But so not a great event for you guys either. So CLG obviously lost to G2 up there at the top. Cloud9 got one map off TSM, but then got knocked out as well. Yep. Actually, it was only Liquid who got a win in that first round against Virtus.pro. We've talked a lot about the North American teams. Who's looking best over the last few months? Does this kind of cement Liquid as North America's best bet at the moment, or with the caveat of Virtus.pro not on full form, do you kind of take that away from them a little bit?
I do kind of take that away from them. I mean, they're showing good things, and obviously they're showing a good trend. I think Cloud9 still looks strongest if they're going to continue, this play they've had after the slump of winning these past two events. I mean, they beat Liquid there, so I think it'd be a little bit unfair to just give it to Liquid based off how they looked in a losing effort. But yeah, Cloud9 to me, as long as they keep up this trend, is looking still the best. It'll be interesting with all the rumors swirling about them and the roster changes that could come early next year. Even Luminosity with their recent roster changes, which we'll touch on later on. Even CLG at this point is having some thoughts about roster changes. So, I mean, these are teams that might not be the same come 2016. So we'll just have to see how the end of the year goes. And yeah, I mean, we haven't had one of these teams consistently step up to the plate in some time. I just saw on Twitch earlier the replay of the last time a North American team made it out of groups at a major, which is when Cologne of last year. So there's not a whole lot of positives going on, although we are seeing improvement to a certain degree.
Just avoid pie on your face, all right? Okay, so last question before we leave this bracket. So Na'Vi, Natus Vincer over there on the right, have gone all the way through the bracket and were the champions in San Jose. They won Intel Extreme Masters. And they pretty much swept straight through this bracket, Jason. As we look at their scores, they 2-0'd Luminosity, they 2-0'd Liquid, then they 2-0'd TSM. A very different team to the one we saw at Civo, for example.
Yeah, I feel like this is a team that kind of looks different every event we see them at. I mean, even when they made their run in Cluj to the finals, they didn't look this good. Part of that was just people stepping up around Guardian, and when that happens, this is one of the best teams in the world, and that's kind of a scary thing. The only issue is it just rarely happens. Like everyone played well for them. Zeus had some sick rounds against TSM in the final. Flamey was on point. Not putting up massive numbers, but the impact frags that he was getting in some of these rounds were huge, in terms of damaging economy, in terms of turning rounds into a dangerous situation that they looked out of. Guardian was, Guardian. So the only scary thing is that this team sometimes gets off to a slow start. I mean, you think, come back against Liquid 14-7 in the semis. Come back against Luminosity like 14, or I guess it was 9 or 7-14 for that Liquid match, and it was like 9-14 against Luminosity on Overpass, and it's all that is done off the back of Guardian. It's like once he gets that op in his hand. So there's still some very, very scary things about Navi that worry me for that moving forward. Trends they have to get out of. But I mean, there's no doubting when they get an op in Guardian's hands and he's playing well, this is a really, really tough team to beat.
Our second story this week is DreamHack Winter and the Faceit Stage 3 finals, which are due to take place starting tomorrow, November 26th, in Jönköping, Sweden. So, once again, this is kind of a Faceit event that's combined with a DreamHack event to put $250,000 up for grabs. And so far, Jason, we've only seen the groups and the initial matchups, so let's have a look at those to begin with. Group A has Virtus Pro, Liquid, TSM Legacy, and Group B, over there on the right, Envious, Luminosity, Fnatic, and Ninjas in Pyjamas. So, first of all, I think the thing about Group A is that this is a kind of an interesting selection of teams, right? We've got Team Liquid as opposed to, Cloud9, for example. Yep. Legacy representing Australia as opposed to Renegades, Immunity, those kind of guys we usually see over here. Walk us through Group A, Jason, and this kind of unusual pick of teams.
This is a really cool group to me. I will just start out because I actually feel bad. I don't know anything about Legacy. I know nothing.
No.
So it will be cool to see how a third team performs because we've seen Immunity do some damage in the past. We saw, Renegades have a tough IBA Power Cup but have a really good RGN tournament, or at least, stepping back up into, they got to the finals. So that was good to see. Hopefully those two teams can continue their trend. So a third one will be cool to watch. But this is the thing. TSM, we just talked, they looked a little bit shaky this past week. I think that tournament, this IEM, is going to, help them get back onto the horse, see if they can get back towards being one of the dominant teams that inspires confidence in their play. I still think Team Liquid poses a really good threat to both Virtus Pro and TSM if they're on point. I don't see them beating TSM, but before the event began, before IEM began, I said Team Liquid would probably beat Virtus Pro. That was my prediction, was a 2-1, even with Snacks. I didn't even know Snacks was going to be gone, so I still think Team Liquid can do that, but that's going to be a dangerous battle because now Virtus Pro is going to come in like pissed. With Snacks back in the roster, be like, all right, you guys bodied us at IEM, you guys embarrassed us in front of the North American crowd, and we're going to get right back at it. So that'll be really cool to see now against Team Liquid, how they're going to play against those two top European teams.
Well, speaking of stronger rosters, over in Group B, this will be the first time that Fnatic have played with Dennis in a LAN tournament.
Yep.
And they're up against pretty stiff competition, I think. MV, Luminosity, certainly no pushovers. Are we going to see Fnatic back on form, do you think?
I don't know. That's kind of the cool thing about this tournament, and even this group in particular, is you also have Luminosity in it, and they made their 2 roster changes, so it's going to be the first glimpse at those two. I don't think we're going to see Fnatic obviously get to the level they've been at in the past immediately. I think they might need a little bit more time, especially with Prodax, who's their major in-game leader, switching over to Flusha. We've seen how they struggled with him calling at times. Now maybe without their former in-game leader in the roster, that might not be so much the case. But also Luminosity, they're a scary team. We talked about a lot how they can take one maps off European teams, how they're very dangerous in that kind of a situation and then kind of flounder. Well, these roster changes are geared to make them a threat across the best of 3. They're not happy enough with just one win. Now, it's going to be a little early on, but those Taco and FNX, they're very talented players. We saw the damage GA was doing against North American teams. So, these guys are going to be no slouch even early on in a roster change. But I don't see Luminosity necessarily being a threat to Envy, but definitely to Fnatic, and I think NIP is going to have a really, really tough time in what might be the last tournament for this roster.
Last but not least, I've got a few quick-fire questions for you, Jason. So, quick as you can, give me your thoughts on the following news stories from the week. First off the bat, sentimental one for us, ESL has completed its acquisition of ESEA.
Yeah, just really, it's been expected for a while. There was some reports put out by it earlier, like maybe a month ago. I think Richard Lewis did an article about it. To me, it just kind of signals that, ESL, I know they want to have more of an impact on the North American region. I know they want to do more events like the recent IEM, that one that just came around, and this just gives them another tool to utilize that. Also, it gives them, complete control over the Pro League, where we saw some the power structure was split between the North American ESEA and the ESL over in Europe. So now that happens, I mean, that ESL is basically completely in control of all decisions coming out of Pro League, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It is what it is.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it also means a lot more episodes of PopFlash, so there you go. Second on the list, MLG have announced that they'll be hosting the first North American major in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, that's going to be cool. And it's awesome. People have been wondering when's the first North American major going to be, and now we got it. Cool that MLG's doing it as well. I know all the players love MLG events. They're very much player-oriented as well as great production.
Absolutely.
So I know the players are happy about that. It's in Columbus. I'm from Michigan. I'm a Wolverines fan, so I don't like Ohio, and I don't like Columbus, Ohio specifically. So, that you take from that what you will.
All right, well, next up, Sean Gares has just announced that he'll be stepping down from Cloud9 with immediate effect.
Yeah, we've been seeing this coming for a while. Obviously, the rumors with Get Right a little bit back, but also just, in interviews, he's been, constantly saying, I want to coach over the past few months, where before that, he was saying, coaching is just kind of interesting, but not really thinking about it right now. So you've kind of seen seems like he's almost been on his way out for some time. But, it's a shame. He's been a staple in North American Counter-Strike. He's been a really, really good in-game leader. One of the in-game leaders I respect the most. Looking back on things, especially when he's been, casting at some of the majors after his team got knocked out, there are times you listen to his knowledge as a color commentator, where he just knows exactly what's going to happen, or before a round begins, he calls out something to look out for, and it works out exactly what he said. Always very impressive, to me as an in-game leader strategically within Counter-Strike. So that's a bummer. Hopefully good things still come for the Cloud9 organization, and that's just one of those things we'll have to see. They've, despite some struggles, they were the best team in North America at the end of this year, and hopefully they can maintain that into the next year as well. But, Sean's a talented guy, a lot of knowledge. Hopefully we'll see him in the scene still. I'm sure he won't have any issue if he chooses to stay within Counter-Strike or just esports in general.
And last this week, Luminosity have dropped Steel and Bolts and added FNX and Taco.
Yeah, that's a bit of a bummer. You got to feel for Steel and Bolts, who have been with this team for a long time, bringing it from Brazil to now here in North America to that Luminosity organization. But this is all geared towards Luminosity. They no longer want to be known as that team who's a threat in best of ones, one map threat. They added talent. FNX and Taco, both very, very good players. So, they're adding talent to make sure that they can have, fragging power and consistency throughout a best of three, because they still have yet to really win a meaningful best of three in some time.
That's it for this week. I'm Jack Westerman, joined by Jason Moses O'Toole.
And we'll be back next Wednesday with another episode of PopFlash.